If we could call tonight's meeting to order of November 2nd, 2021. Tom Chapa.
Here.
Heather Del Conte. Here. Pamela Dowd.
Here.
Here. James McKenzie. Sean Ahmed. Here. Linda Serino. Zachary DeMont. Here. If you would all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if you would all join me, if you would, in a moment of silence for a district bus driver that just recently passed away, Cindy Babcock. Thank you. There is no one to sign up for the floor to the public, so we will go to the Board of Education. The revision of the 2021-22 instructional calendar as presented. If I could have a motion. Second?
Second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Next is the Superintendent's report with Dr. Calvin.
Good evening, Board. Just pull this closer to me. All right, thank you. Good to see everybody again. Glad to be back again tonight. And we do have a number of items that we certainly want to go through this evening with the Board this evening. So I think I'll start tonight by just sharing an update with respect to our schools. We are continuing to move forward. Our staff and our students are working very diligently and working really hard as we now approach the month of, well, we're now in the middle of the month of November now. Some recent activities that have occurred across the district. November 1st, our Strategic Planning Committee met. We had quite a few of our folks there, spent some time in subgroups and just began to work on all of the different strategies and all of the different priorities. And we've set some additional dates to meet up until, we come back together as a whole committee in January. So great meeting to start the year out and just kind of really focus on those items in the strategic plan. We will be sharing minutes before this week's out with all the board members and the next steps, okay? November 5th, we had our Professional Development Day with Dr. Lisa Deeker from the University of Central Florida. She was fantastic. We really enjoyed the time that was spent with her. She was really focusing a lot on supporting students. Differentiation was really the word of the day. How can we differentiate? What can we do to leverage technology and outcomes for kids? I have a copy of the presentation that I think we sent out to all the board members. We sent out both, the one for elementary as well as the one for secondary staff, okay? And then later tonight, I want to, by the way, highlight, we have Junior High School National Honor Society induction ceremony that's happening this evening. We want to congratulate all of those students in advance and wish them the very best as they continue to move forward in their academic pursuits. So just really excited and proud of those kids tonight. I wanted to share that. Want to just shift gears a little bit and talk about testing. We have been continuing to work on the whole testing process. With respect to diagnostic testing, it is now being offered, as I shared before, by Pulaski Urgent Care and through our mobile unit that's here now on Thursdays. The appointments have been full. People have been accessing it and taking advantage of it. I actually was at the mobile unit last Thursday. I just wanted to pop in to see, and the week before that, and people were there utilizing the service and thanking the district for the work around that. And really, we're just excited about the partnership between the county and the district, and it's been good. With respect to screening testing, we met with Affinity Empowering about a week or so ago. We had a full-scale logistics meeting, got everything laid out. All of our supplies, materials, everything from that company have now been ordered. We are now just solidifying the staffing that needs to be in place. You have some things actually on the agenda tonight that will help us to solidify some of those staffing pieces. We are definitely ready to get going. So as soon as we get those tests and all the staff trained, the new staff that's coming in, we'll be ready to go. And we're thinking about 2 weeks, maybe around the Thanksgiving time, probably shortly thereafter, that everything will be going and moving. But we've got everything ordered, everything on its way in, and we'll be ready to go very shortly. So really excited about that. More information on that coming in the near future. Okay. Just in terms of the vaccination now, so as you all are aware, vaccinations are now offered for ages 5 through 11, and we are excited to let the public know that we are going to be having a partnership with the county health department. They recently contacted us and shared that they would definitely like to partner with us and offer a vaccination clinic. We have a date set for our first clinic, November 18th, 2021. The hours are going to be between 2:30 to 6:30 p.m. It's going to be located in the high school cafeteria. Parents and guardians have already been notified. In fact, yesterday we sent out an email sharing with them, if you'd like to register, go online and register. And, you know, they can certainly do that now. Just a couple of things. Parents must attend with their children. Permission slips have to be submitted. And there's an online registration. Now, if there's someone out there who is not able to do this online, no worries. Just give us a call at our COVID hotline, and we have folks there that will help you with the registration right over the phone. Now, we've shared with the County Health Department that we'd like to do, by the way, some additional clinics too. Our goal is to make sure that anybody who wants to be vaccinated, that if we can offer it here in schools, that we'd like to do that. So we have kids who, you know, and staff who weren't able to get vaccinated for whatever reason last school year when we had our clinic. So what we've asked is, hey, can we have a clinic where we can get 5 up? Basically, anybody who wants to do it, would you be willing to do that? The county has said that they'll certainly work on that, and we'll see what we can do around that. And so we're just going to keep in touch with them, and we'll let you know when the next, you know, piece happens. They wanted to be careful because right now we're doing all the little kids and want to be careful with dosages and just how that whole process works out. So we'll start with the one we got coming, and then we'll go from there. Okay. Any questions, by the way? Go ahead.
Did have one just regarding the COVID hotline number and where people will be able to access that.
Yeah, so that number is online on our webpage. If you just click on the page for COVID-19, you'll see the hotline number right there. It certainly is right there online. Okay. I
Thanks.
wish I had it in front of me today, but I don't have it right now. But definitely, if you go online, you can find it. Okay. Just some updates in terms of our efficiency study. So the Transportation Advisory Services study has already begun, so they have already started to ask for information. We have had a logistical meeting with them probably about a week and a half ago, Nancy, I believe the meeting was, and they've already started to ask for info, and they'll be coming to the district to gain additional info and to do some touring and talking with some of the staff. Rick Timms from the Statewide School Finance Consortium has also started. He has asked for quite a bit of information that he is now doing a data dive on, and then we'll hear from him very shortly. With respect to the program service delivery review, so tonight in your packet, you do have there the proposal for Costello Silky. Thank you. Costello and Silky LLC. And in our last meeting, I shared that those are the 2 proposals that we were looking at. The second one, proposal 2, is the one that I would most likely recommend. We did check in to see if there was aid for that. If you'll recall, I shared in the last meeting that that's not being aided anymore by BOCES. It is not aided, unfortunately. However, some of the work that comes after the actual study may be aided, right? So if there are special things or projects, we would have to take it to BOCES and see, hey, is this something that you could aid, or is this something you can aid? So some things may be aided after, but the actual study itself will not be aided. My recommendation is for proposal 2 per the board packet this evening. Also, in terms of additional proposed study areas, so we recently had some work done, as you know, here with our capital project. And there was a group, a Siemens group, that was here and said, listen, you know, they do energy efficiency projects. And while we were doing work, would you like to, you know, have us take a look to just see if there are some items that might, you might want to think about looking at for the near future. You know, when I first came to the district, one of the things that we did see in some of our reports was that we might want to think about some efficiencies in terms of energy efficiency studies. So I did say to them, you know, what's the cost? It's free. So I like free. So, you know, I asked them to go ahead and start taking a look at that. And there's some great ideas that have come out of that, and I'd like to share that information with the board as a part of our study. Again, there's no cost to it, but there are certainly millions of dollars worth of efficiencies that the board could potentially realize. So if okay with you all, I'd like to bring that report before the board and share that with you. And then after doing that, if we want to go further and study that kind of area even more, now that would cost a little bit more. You would have to pay for that. And you could do an RFP and get other folks to come in and look at that. But I think this bird's eye view portion of it, I think, is very eye-opening, and I think it'll be great for the board, and it'll give us some good information that we can look at and try to think about as we move forward with how we might save for the future. So everybody okay with that? Are we all good with that? Okay. All right, great. So that is the Siemens Group. So that's where we're at in terms of the study. There were some questions before the board meeting from one of our board members about areas of the study, and just want to answer those. So when was the last time the district did a school facilities and efficiency study, either external or internal? We have no record of an efficiency study being done like this. We can't find anything that says with any of that information. So this would kind of be a first for external and internal study around efficiencies like this. So just wanted to share that. Have we determined if the study can now be aided? So again, the transportation portion of the study will be aided. The fiscal and program delivery portions of the study are not aided. The preliminary energy portion that I just talked about from the Siemens Group has no cost to it, so there's no need for aid. And then the in-depth, if we want to go back and do a deeper dive with the energy efficiency portions, it could be aided, or there's a possibility of getting grants for that work through NYSERDA, if you would like to do an additional deep dive study. Okay, I just want to answer that question. All right. Yes. Yeah, thank you, yes, thank you. Yes, the COVID hotline number, thanks for asking again, Tom. The number is 315-341-2050. So any questions, any concerns, and really any questions people might have about COVID or vaccine clinics, or if you need to get signed up for testing, you can call that number, 315-341-2050, and our folks will be there to help and support. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Okay. Yep. All right. So I want to just shift a little bit and talk also about another area I wanted to just bring before the board this evening, and that is around staffing, particularly around ELA, math, and our business office. So we have, I've been here for a little while now, and I've been able to really kind of assess what's happening in the district and just see how the day-to-day operations are going. And one of the things that we have come to understand is that several years back, due to some budget implications, and as we kind of move forward from that time frame, there's been some rescissions in terms of positions. There have been some cuts or cutbacks, basically. And we've tried to basically, as a district, combine positions, right? Put things where we can together to try to make it through. And so I certainly understand that as we're talking about efficiencies, right? I totally get it. However, what we are clear on is that in some cases, while that did get us through some of those difficult, challenging times, as we, now later, we're struggling in terms of some of the areas that we really need help with. So a couple areas, ELA and math. When we look at our performance and we look at how kids are doing, and especially now with the gaps that we see in instruction, what's really clear to us is that we need a little extra help, well, a lot of extra help to really obtain some of those goals that we have as a district, and really to help us to focus on some of the areas that are outlined in our strategic plan. So tonight, I want to share that what we are looking, what we'd like to do as a district is hire some additional hands, some additional administrative hands and supports. The first one is with a director of English language arts. Again, we need someone, who will help us with providing extra support for ELA, direction for ELA, someone who will assist with helping to better align curriculum, professional development, and instruction across, the district. We want to really raise those student outcomes, and we, again, want to focus on the literacy portion that is in our strategic plan, and so we need a director to assist us in these areas. The second area is in math. Again, we are certainly in need of extra support around math. We have students who are struggling with math, quite a few, and we need someone to come in to help us with, making sure that we are certainly laser-like focused on those instructional gaps. We want, again, better aligned curriculum, professional development, and instruction across the district, and we want to raise the outcomes, basically. So we are, as a district, re-looking at what we're doing every day and what we need, and certainly in these areas, we know that we need some help. We're also a district with a very a high budget, right? $91 million budget. And the requirements around maintaining our budget, but also just the day-to-day reporting has increased over the years, and it continues to increase. COVID-19 has just exacerbated the work that needs to be done. We have a lot in the day-to-day operations and management with respect to the business administration portions of the district: transportation, food service, buildings and grounds, securities, grants, writing, all of those things are included in addition to managing a $91 million budget. And so support is needed to assist with those day-to-day operations in each of those different areas. And so tonight, what I'm asking the board for is permission to move forward with hiring in those 3 areas, and certainly I welcome your feedback. Now, again, we had some questions about this, and I wanted to share some answers, just so folks know. So, what is the proposed salary for each of these types of positions? So per the current AAP contract, the hiring rate for, a director is at $93,400, right? And certainly we want to hire folks who are really experienced, who can really help us to move our instructional pieces forward. So we would also look at, the experience of the folks who are coming in, what they're doing now, what are their current salaries. So certainly that would be a part of this whole hiring process. For an assistant director of business, that is an exempt, non-affiliated contract position. And so that person would be coming in between about 75 to 80K is what that position would look like. Again, we would look at experience and certainly what people are doing out there in the field for those positions. One of the things that you should know too is that we are certainly looking for opportunities to be able to make this affordable, right? So for example, the Director of English Language Arts position, we do have some title funds, some grant funds that we can use to help to support this position. And any opportunities like those that come open, we would certainly look for those types of ways to help fund the positions, basically. But to answer that question, just wanted to share that that's what those rates normally would start at. Are the positions tenorable? So the Director of Math and English Language Arts are a tenured track position. Those are. The Assistant Director of Business would be exempt. It's a non-affiliated contract position. Accordingly, there's not a tenure track to that position. Okay. What administration positions were cut from the previous budget? So we've had a number of positions cut over the years. So just to name a couple of those, in the past we've had a Director of Literacy, we had a Director of Math, a Director of Data and Academic Intervention Support, Assistant Director of Special Education, Assistant Superintendent and Director of Curriculum and Instruction. And also, there were a number of TOSA positions that were in place years ago. So there was a Math and Science TOSA position, Teacher on Special Assignment, an ELA and Social Studies position, and a Technology position. And over the years, again, because we needed to cut back in areas during real difficult times or challenging times, these are just positions that were cut back, basically. So we understand, but you can see the breadth of work that was being done that has now been consolidated quite a bit, basically now. So what are districts of our size and needs that have these types of positions? So we did look into what districts of our size are doing. Let me tell you that there was no district that had everything exactly the same. So one size clearly doesn't fit all. But what we did see was that there were some common strings across other districts. Some people have curriculum leaders. There were some districts that had directors. Some had intervention specialists. I looked at district like Central Square, not too, or it's around our size, right? So they have on their, when you look at their chart, their organizational chart, curriculum consultants, department coordinators, they have director of academic supports and intervention, an executive director of planning, development, and technology. That's that district. Fulton, not too far from here. A director of literacy in UPK. They have executive director of instruction and achievement, a chief operations and innovations person. They have a director of student support. Let's see, director of instructional support services. So different things, different kinds of titles, but at the end of the day, they're meeting the needs in their own way, right? We did look at some districts in central New York. I think we looked at Fayetteville, Manulus. Heidi, help me off the top of my head. Yeah. Yeah. And again, everybody was different. Nobody was the same. But what we did see was, in many of those cases, a focus on literacy, a focus on math, science and technology. Definitely you saw those common threads across the board in many of those districts. And some had more than what we have, most did. Some, very few we saw with less. The ones who had less were generally, a district that was smaller. However, even in the smaller cases, you mentioned Phoenix, they had an assistant director, if I remember, assistant superintendent, was it? I can't remember. Okay. So just wanted to share that information with folks, okay? What is the process of eliminating these positions if future boards wanted to? So what basically happens when you eliminate a position is that the superintendent and the board, we just kind of talk together and consider impact of elimination. And then once that is done, then the board decides, if it wants to move forward with eliminating a position as it sees fit, basically. Okay. Any questions on any of those questions or answers? Any thoughts? Everybody okay? Okay. Okay, now we also tonight had a couple other questions around our MOA with the Oswego Police, which is in the packet tonight. One of those questions were, what is the actual cost, including fringe benefits? So the cost, whenever we need to bring officers in from Oswego Police Department, they range between $42 to $65 an hour. It really is dependent upon the salary of that officer who is available, who wants to come in and do overtime. But those costs range between $42 to $65 an hour. The district does not pay for any benefits at all, so there's no fringe in that. The only thing we do is just FICA, if I remember correctly. So that's what it generally costs. Okay. How many officers will be needed and how often, the estimated total cost. So it really depends upon the activity and the safety concerns that are happening, right? We could have a football game that we think we're going to have a pretty large crowd there. We might need, 3 to 4 folks. Another week later, if there's real concerns about real issues at the game, we could need 6 or 7 folks. It really depends on what's happening at the time in the community. What are we experiencing? Feedback that we're hearing about the event. So it's really difficult to put an actual number of what you might need at what time. It's all dependent upon the activities. And by the way, this is our secondary piece, right? If we don't have to have them there, then we try our best not to have them there. But certainly this year, with a lot of the challenges that, just coming back into school and transitioning, we felt we really need to have some extra hands at these events. Okay? All right. Substitute temporary position rate proposals. So, what are they currently being paid, the substitutes, and how much will the raises cost the district? How do we compare to our neighboring districts? So staff are currently being paid at last year's rates. The rates this year would be increasing by 76 cents per hour, if I remember correctly. And the district ran a report, and there are 69 sub-temp positions in the system. We use the following formula to calculate the estimated costs. So we have 69 sub-temp positions at 70 cents increase in an hourly rate for the last year to this year, and it was 30 estimated numbers of days that they would work, and then it's basically 7 hour a day, right? And that comes up to an estimated, projected cost at about $10,143 amount that would increase our budget this year by. Nancy, anything else you want to add to that, or Heidi at all? No?
Typically, it'll come forward at the reorganization meeting. It has for the last few years. We fell off the projected chart for the minimum wage increase. We had to wait until New York State put out the new rate, which they just did September 30th, so towards the end of September. But normally, we get that increase in the summer months.
Okay, any other questions from the board on that? Okay. All right, so now we want to just shift a little bit and talk a little bit about the budget process. Several meetings ago, the board asked that if we could just start discussions around the budget process a little bit early, and so certainly we'd like to do that this evening. So as we kind of move forward with our budget this year, as we did last year, we certainly have a couple goals that we'd like to see done. First of all, that we create a budget in partnership with the board that is, not only approved by the board, but that it's fiscally sound, not excessive to our taxpayers, that it is flexible, meaning that it provides for flexibility within budget codes, that our budget is foolproof. It provides for emergencies should they occur. Something goes wrong, we're good. We've just experienced that with our soil project, right? And then that we have a budget that's flowing, that it has enough cash flow available in case state aid is withheld. And this year, I added an extra piece there, in that we have a budget that's aligned, right? We want alignment to our district strategic plan, so that what we do, that plan is kind of like the pruning device to help us make sure that we stay focused on those items that the board has identified and that we have in our strategic plan. Yes?
I know this is somewhat mentioned in that strategic plan, but I know when we all met for our goals, one thing that was very important was a budget that considers long-term perspective.
Absolutely. Great. So we can add that under the alignment piece that considers the long-term perspective. Okay, we'll do. Thank you. So tonight, in terms of our workshop, we just have a couple of things we want to talk about with you tonight. Foundation aid is the first, current budget, reserves, our ARP and ESSER 2 grants, enrollment, tax levy history, tax rate history, efficiency studies, which we've already kind of talked through, a survey opportunity, and then priorities, instructional focus and goals. Kind of, we just went through those. And then I have just some information around the budget book, and we'll be all set. So recently, we've got some updated information around foundation aid. In 1993, the Campaign for Fiscal Equity filed a constitutional challenge against New York State, basically, alleging that, the state was not funding everybody in a fair way, right? There was a real issue around foundation aid. And the Courts of Appeals, New York's highest court, ruled in 1995 that in New York State, the Constitution requires that the state offer all children the opportunities for a sound and basic education. There have been a number of folks who've been working on this. Michael Rebel certainly has worked on it. He's a well-known lawyer, did a lot of work around 2003. One of our folks who's helping us with our fiscal study certainly was a huge advocate in this, Rick Timms. And there's been just a lot of work and a lot of legal challenges to this foundation aid issue. 2006, the Court of Appeals reaffirmed the decision, saying that, hey, we do need to do something about this. And then the Campaign for Fiscal Equity case established a very sound legal basis for which the case was built. Governor Hochul has now come in, this is, 18 years later, and said, this case has kind of gone on way too long, and it's time to settle it, and we just need to fund the schools like we're supposed to, basically. So the state, through her leadership, has now settled in the case and discontinued the New Yorkers for Students' Educational Right versus New York State, And the outcome is that, within the next 2 years, the state has said we will fully fund the current formula, our Foundation Aid formula. The funds will be dispersed over a 3-year period, so we're kind of in year 1. We got a little bit more aid this year. Next year and the following year, we'll certainly see some things continue to add up. This ends, by the way, the dispute between the districts and the states that's gone on all those years. I'm not going to read this whole statement to you, but basically, her comments continue to say that every New Yorker, every kid from New York State deserves a quality education. And so funding education the right way will make sure that is one step in making sure that occurs. So the state now has said, hey, we're going to fully fund Foundation Aid. And Nancy, please stop me if there's something you need to add, please. They said, hey, we'll fully fund it by 2024. So to make up for the shortfall of Foundation Aid freeze, funding is going to be going forward, and it will include $19.8 billion across the state in 2022, $21.3 billion in 2023, and $23.2 billion in 2024. So fully funding this aid will ensure that all kids, again, can attend schools with the resources that that are needed to help close those gaps, by the way, too. Our district is going to be receiving $22,919,486 in the current year. This is year 1. But we will ultimately get to the current, based on, and this is based on information that we've received from
Questar BOCES.
Thank you. CoStar. Say it again.
Questar.
Questar BOCES, thank you. They do a lot of financial aid runs for us. So they've shared that we will ultimately get to a current total of $34,399,100 by 2023-24. This means that our district will, by 2024, will see an $11,479,614 foundation aid increase based on our current enrollment. So that's good news, right? To see us get funded like we really need to, that will make a big difference, I think, across the district. So I just wanted to share that good news for Oswego. Any questions around that? Everybody good? Sure.
I just want to be clear that they're making up the shortfall, but it's not just over the 3-year period. It's to bring us to the rate that we should have been established, and we will maintain that following those 3 years, correct?
That's correct.
Okay,
That's correct.
great, thank you.
Well, just reviewing our current budget, as we start to look at next year's budget, our current budget is at $91,159,811. The budget for the 2023 year will need to be increased. One of the things that we do need to think about is that we will have to see a little increase in our budget, well, a large increase in our budget because of the emergency soil remediation project. So we're going to have to do some work around PR to help the public understand that it's going to be zeroed out, right? So money that's spent out, money that comes back in. But it will look like an increase. However, it truly is zeroing out what we've already had, what we will spend on the emergency project. So certainly something we want to think about as we kind of move forward. This is a one-time increase of the budget, and it's really, again, to offset building aid that will be received and will have a zero effect on the tax levy, okay? In terms of the budget appropriations, Nancy, you want to just talk a little bit about that slide there for us?
Sure. As we've said in the past, the majority of every budget is salary and benefits. And this calculates out to about 75% of our total budget is salary and benefits. The remainder is comprised of some contractual expenditures, which are $5.5 million, $10.3 million in BOCES costs. Supplies is very low at $1.2 million. And our debt service, which is our principal and interest on all of our debt, is $7.1 million. And equipment is $426,500. So that is our current budget broken out into the pie pieces.
Thank you. Reserves, would you want to go over reserves as well, Nancy?
So, and I'm sorry that this is so small and hard to read, but what you're seeing in this slide is all of our reserves, the beginning balances as of the beginning of the year, increases that the board had voted on at the end, just a few meetings ago, and a decrease in the unemployment reserve. And if you recall, that was to be used for computers for one-to-one devices. So we started out with $11.6 million in our reserves. We have increased the reserves $7.4 million, decreased the reserves by $823,000, and our ending reserve balance is $18,259,754. If you recall, the workers' comp and the unemployment are flexible reserves. So if the board chose to use some of that money for contingent expenditures, which means something necessary for education, they could do so. ERS and TRS are our retirement reserves, and the majority of the increase in the reserves was for the capital reserves for future capital projects, and that's to be used to offset the local share.
Couple things just want to share as we kind of look at our budget for next year. We do have some grants that we are working through that will need to be a part of our budget as well, because certainly these are revenue funds, right? So we have the American Rescue Plan. There's $8.9 million that the district receives over 3 years. It's 3 years worth of funding. And then we have the Elementary Secondary Emergency Relief Fund, which is $3.9 million that we receive over 2 years. We're currently in the first year of both of those, right? So between the two, there's a combined federal funding amount of $12.95580 in terms of $1 million that we're receiving for those in terms of grants there. I want to just kind of talk a little bit about enrollment. So we did look at enrollment, just kind of look at the historical piece around enrollment. So these enrollment figures are based on the October date, the BEDS day, as they call it, right? The day where we calculate to see where numbers are. So these numbers certainly fluctuate depending on each month and who comes in, goes out around the 1st of the month and the 15th of the month as well. But you can see where we were back in 2014 and see where we currently are in the 2021. And then we have live birth data projections for the next 2 years out. And certainly those numbers could change depending upon who moves in or who moves out. But those are some of the projections and things that we kind of want to think about. Now, when people look at this enrollment piece, they say, boy, your numbers are getting less, right? But your budget is going up. So certainly just thinking in terms of the balance around that, needs, right? Our needs, our demographics in the district has certainly changed since 2014. And there are certainly a lot of high needs in terms of the learning needs of a number of our students and staff. Certainly we've had to bring in differentiated types of staff to help and support our students. So as we kind of move through the budget process, we want to unpack this even more and just kind of talk through this in terms of what the district needs are to match the staffing and also the budget pieces around that. School tax levy. Nancy, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. This is just a graphical representation of the school tax levy. This is the amount that the taxpayers use to support our budget. As you can see, there was a spike in 2011 and 2014. Those two spikes are due to the nuclear pilot, the pilots coming off and the properties going back on the tax rolls. And then it comes off in the following years when the pilots are settled. So that does create an anomaly in our tax levy. The last 2 years, you can see that the levy has remained flat at $26,643,448, and it has not grown substantially. As a matter of fact, it has gone up, and now we're seeing a decreasing trend in the levy.
Is it true that when the nuclear plants go back on their tax rolls, because it does appear that there's more local share, does that affect the state aid calculation?
It does. So when the property goes back on the tax rolls, it makes us look like a wealthy district.
Right.
So our combined wealth ratio is a lot higher, and that reduces our state aid. So when the property is under a pilot agreement, we have a pilot agreement that allows for the property to be off of our tax rolls, making us look poorer, which drives up our aid.
And is that part of the explanation for that infamous year when we had to cut sports and really some of the cuts that Dr. Calvin was talking about today?
Yes, because what happened in that year, when we had to cut those positions, your state aid follows 3 years after, so there's a 3-year lag on your state aid. And so when the pilot was not settled with the nuclear power plants and it had to go on the tax rolls, we looked wealthy. We did end up getting a pilot, but we did not see the effects until 3 years after that budget.
Okay. Any other questions? Everybody good? Okay, all right. Tax rate. So our tax rate is kind of lower than what it was back in 2011, but why don't we just kind of look at that a little bit? Nancy, if you want to share that information with the board?
Sure, so what drives our tax rate is the equalization rate in the different towns and in the city, and also the properties on the tax rolls. And it's all driven by a formula that is from our tax levy. So the school tax rates have gone down significantly since 2016, 2017, where there's a high of $20.84, and they have been decreasing, and the 2021 rate is $17.38 per thousand. So with the tax rates, this is an average. Different towns, because they have different equalization rates, might have a higher or a lower rate, but this is the city rate.
Questions?
Nancy, do we know, or at any time, relative to the city assessments, when those change and how they affect us?
So the assessments are changing all the time. It's not a certain point. As a matter of fact, you have an exemption report in your binders that we run, that we put into the budget book every year. And I call the county and they can give me the rate, but it is only good as of that day, because properties come on and off the tax rolls. Taxpayers may challenge their assessments, and they change all the time. So the closer we get to the actual budget, then we'll call for another report from the assessor's office to get a better idea of which properties are exempt.
Okay. So we've talked a little bit about our studies tonight. I certainly won't read all of this, but the goal of the studies is to assist us as we move forward with creating the budget, right? So, we have the transportation study, which will help us with policies and program operations and maintenance and labor and ordering, and, we're going to look at everything around transportation. The long-term fiscal planning process will help us with looking at our reserve balance, our fund balance, budgeting guidelines, debt service issues, long-range plans, which will hopefully, again, help us as well as we prepare this year's budget, right? The schools facility piece will look at current grade facility configurations, staffing structures in our district, student enrollment history, our organization, how we organized. We will look at, similar school districts, and how we compare to them, and what are some of those services that other districts are doing or not doing that we are or aren't doing. We'll look at space utilization, current district non-instructional operations, and then also the advantages and the disadvantages to potential options for, for configurations of, how we have our schools configured, basically. And then that energy efficiency piece that I talked about, we'll look at electrical improvements, lighting, our fans, our vending machines, everything that's included with electrical, and then even high efficiency transformers. It'll look at building automation upgrades that we might want to consider, building envelope improvements, and then also miscellaneous measures like replacing even things like pool covers or plug load controllers or pipe, insulation and replacement. So we'll look at a number of things. And our goal, again, is to help inform our budget process, not only this year, but moving forward, to help us with how we might be better efficient, right? The goal is to not, we don't want to raise taxes when we don't have to, wherever we don't have to, and keep things also very efficient for our public. Okay? All right, so those are I call it the meat and the potatoes, basically. And just to kind of, as we kind of end off here, so one of the things, if the board is interested, that we'd like to see, if you are interested in, is maybe doing a survey this year, where we ask our public, some questions, our parents, our taxpayers, our community members, in terms of priorities, what are some things that they might like to see us do in terms of the budget, just to help inform our process, and we can do those surveys through email, social media, we can do them through print, and some, possible topics, programming interest, school building needs, safety and security, budget items by category. And what if the board is open to it, we could bring back a couple surveys that are out there in the field, share it with the board, and then if you like them, great. If you don't, you can say nope. That's good too. And we can kind of, build those surveys to ask any questions that you like, but not sure your thoughts on that. How do you feel about maybe doing a survey with the public? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure, like, time-wise, how quickly we can turn it around. I think it would be, I think it's always good to get public input and to have people even consider what goes into budgeting, because they may not be aware. I guess I would say if we could stay away from the print version as much as possible, because that's where our costs are really gonna go up if we have to print those. But yeah, I think it makes sense.
And what has been our typical, return rate on the surveys we've been doing?
Well, so I'm not sure about before this year, but when we've done a survey as a recent, we've had quite a bit of people following through. Just the other day, I put out some information just to get interest around the COVID-19, some of the things that we're doing. Would people just be interested? We had over 400 people, over 400, I think, in 435.
That's great.
So it was, people,
Yeah.
they've been responding to the surveys that we've been putting out, at least.
So I'm wondering too if, I know the surveys that I've participated in are, multiple choice. Is it possible to have surveys where you have kind of open, so you can get some qualitative responses? I mean, you can still code them for, quantitative data, but I think it is important to let people kind of have a moment to express themselves as well. Limited characters.
Yes, there is actually, a great surveying tool. And you know what, why don't we let me see if we can take a look at it. It's called Let's Talk. I think, Nancy, I may have mentioned this to you before. Let's Talk. It's a great community survey tool where you can.
Thought exchange.
Thought exchange, that's it. Thought exchange, thank you. Oh, it helps you to talk. Oh, whatever, it's all good. But yeah, there's a good survey tool that has open-ended questions, and you can put it out, and people just start to answer, and based on what others have said, it's out. You know what, I'll bring that presentation to the board, and it's a great tool. Lisa, you want to say something?
This is completely selfish as a social scientist. If we could have also a disclaimer that the responses will be completely anonymized,
Yes.
but might be used for research about our community, would be helpful and useful for those of us who may want to study and dig a little deeper and look for trends.
Sure. Sure, absolutely.
I like the idea of the survey because the backwards part of the whole budget process is the public hearing is after we've already approved it. So a survey ahead of time, I think it's long overdue for this community.
Okay, great. Tom, or good, Tom and Sean? Good, okay. So we'll bring some information back on thought exchange, and we'll if that tool and some other tools for you, okay? All right. Okay, last part, just wanted to share with you, we did have some requests last year around the budget book, so we brought budget books for everybody, and so they're not totally all filled in yet, but as we get information, we'll bring it to you, and then you can just kind of put it in your book, and we're just going to build the book together. Does that make sense? Yes, and then this year, so just to start out with, we put in this book 5 years, well, more than 5 years worth of data around different budget account lines. I think this was requested last year, so we put in the additional this year's information there. We do have the equalized current rates that are there, and as Nancy just said, these will change throughout the year. So as we kind of move forward, we'll give you the updated information. There is report card information, temporary data that's there now. We want to keep in mind that some of this data around our report card that we normally put in there may change, may be different, may actually not be used. So the state put out information last week sharing that they want to talk to the feds about the data because there's so many disqualifiers in the data due to COVID-19. So what they'd like to do is actually see if we can get rid of some of our accountability measures, which means the school report card that we've been used to might change this year. So there's even some comment period that's happening right now. Carrie, I think I got that correct. Am I right on that part?
They're doing a survey. The state has put out a survey to see how people's feelings about how we could report to the federal government around accountability with our ESSA.
Okay, so that may change, but we gave you what we have now, right? And then there's some other items that as we move along, we'll bring to you. So the budget notice goes out in May. We'll get that to you as soon as we have that. The proposed general fund revenue and also appropriations, that comes around March to April. We'll give that to you then. And then also the administrative compensation information, that's around late March, April as well. And so we'll just, like I said, build the book together this year. Okay? Any questions or concerns? Everybody good with that? Okay, great. All right, so that's what we got around our budget. And if there's any other topics that the board might like information on, if you just let us know, then as we come back for our next workshop, we will make sure that we address those topics or bring you back that information. Okay? Any questions or any concerns or any thoughts from any other board members?
Matt, one thing I was thinking of, we all have the budget book from last year, which I appreciate. Does everyone still have theirs somewhere? I think so. Okay, well, one of the issues is like familiarity around the codes and just knowing what we're looking at in terms of line items. So I'm wondering if maybe at it doesn't have to be the next one, but at least one of these as we move forward, maybe, a conversation on, what the codes mean and that kind of a thing. So we're better just equipped to look at the budget book.
We'll do. Sure, we can do that. Okay, we'll do. Okay. All right, board, that's all I have tonight. Thank you for your time.
Next on the agenda is the consent agenda, items A through K. If I could have a motion.
I'll move it.
Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is curriculum with Carrie Class.
Microphone, turn your microphone on there. Flip it, there you go.
Thought I had it on, sorry. A through, what'd I say? A through D. A is combining athletic contracts, girls varsity hockey, combination with Hannibal and Pulaski. B being curriculum and instructional federal program, this would be the Title II-A. C, a new course proposal at the high school, a one-semester social studies course called Her Story. D, combining athletic contracts, boys varsity bowling.
Items A through D, motion please.
Move it.
Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Yeah. I think there's some discussion. Tom, Pam, and.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to clarify, we talked about in combining those, none of our students would be losing any positions on those teams. They all have priority relative to those combinations,
That is correct.
correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. The new course proposal is awesome. Can we explain a little bit what that is?
Carrie? It's an exciting class. It'd be nice for everyone to know.
It's the Women of World History, and it will be, much of the world history is focused on the lives and pursuits of men, but this is only part of the story. The Objective of the course is to cross time periods and nations to introduce the remarkable women of world history and explore the concept of gender around the world. It will highlight women's everyday lives and their major contributions to history.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
What an awesome course.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is personnel with Dr. Sweeney.
A is a retirement for Benjamin Driscoll Jr. at the high school, whereas Benjamin Driscoll Jr. was employed continuously by the Oswego City School District from May 7th, 1984 until October 31st, 2021, and whereas Mr. Driscoll admirably served the students and staff of the Oswego City School District with his full commitment to his responsibilities as a senior custodian to work in partnership with fellow employees and with his full service and dedication to the best interests of all the students of the Oswego City School District. Now therefore be it resolved that we hereby recognize the service of Mr. Driscoll, and he was an asset to the students and staff of our district, and we express gratitude and sincere appreciation for his 37 years of service.
Motion?
Move it.
Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in
Just-
favor?
Well, I just want to say,
Oh, I'm sorry.
that's amazing, 37 years, and congratulations, and thank you very
Yeah,
much.
he's been a wonderful employee, very
Yeah.
dedicated.
Yeah.
I
Thank you.
worked with Ben. Happy retirement, Ben.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Our professional staff appointments, we have B through K. We have 2 probationary appointments for science and speech. And then we have an assortment of extra compensatory presentations, various chaperones, additions to titles. We continue to bring forward additional folks throughout the semester as needed. And we have also J, our extra volunteer recommendations. Those are recommendations for volunteers for the winter sports area. So we have B through K as presented.
Items B through K. Motion, please.
Make the motion?
Second?
Second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Our support staff recommendations, we have items L through O. We have a group of leaves of absence, 2 probationary appointments for food service helper, a temporary support staff recommendation. This would be our lead COVID screening coordinator for our team of folks who will be doing the testing, the screening testing. And then O, our substitute and temporary employees.
Items L through O. Motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And then my last item is P, and that is our substitute and temporary position rates for the 21-22 school year, as we discussed earlier.
Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is finance with Nancy Squires.
A is our MOU with the Oswego City Police Department for event coverage. B and C are contracts with UniFirst. One is for food service and the other one is transportation. D is the external audit corrective action plan. And E is the school facilities and efficiency study proposal that Dr. Calvin had referenced in his PowerPoint presentation.
Items A through E. Motion?
I'll move it.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is the student representative discussion.
Zach, did you have anything you want to bring forward to the board? And you look kind of caught off guard, so you have this moment every time you're here. And even if you're not going to be here and you want to bring something forward, you can send it to myself or to Dr. Kelvin in writing, and we can still present it at this time. But anything you'd like to say?
Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank you guys for your flexibility with me being able to come to meetings. in a busy schedule. And also, I've been meeting with Mr. Lanigan about this school year, and we're really excited to, I guess, form new plans for what's going to happen. And one of the main focuses was for the seniors, actually, thinking about school field trips and wondering where that was going to go, because I know that's a topic of interest for a lot of the people at the school, and I know the senior class officers are meeting as well to discuss that. I'm glad that we got to revise the lunches a little bit. I know that was a difficult transition with like having half of a lunch and moving to the theater, some kids not getting a lot of time to eat. So it was good to make a transition to there and maybe even move forward to that, and getting all the kids in the same lunch would be one of my goals on the board. And I am meeting with Mr. Lanigan about every 2 weeks, so I should have more to bring about information about the school year next meeting.
Thank you.
Excellent. Next is items from the board.
Pam?
Thank you, everyone, for switching weeks for the meeting. We'll address our calendar next time. But as always, thank you to our teachers, our staff, our support staff, our students, our nurses who have really had a lot on their plates this year. Not that everybody else hasn't either, but yeah, just we appreciate everything that you all do. Thank you.
Any other items from board members? Tom? Oh, you looked like you had something really important to say. Now you got to come up with something.
No more items? Okay, next would be executive session. Could I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Discuss, or
What's that?
do you want me to share what we need to discuss? So we would need to discuss the performance of a particular staff
Yep.
person and/or corporation, and also matters of security, please. Thank you.
I'll make the motion.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You may move to executive session.
Thank you.
It wasn't too bad.